Welcome back to the 257th episode of the Daily Flip podcast. I'm your host, Alex, and today we're going to be flipping through some of the top stories, including how John Rawls predicts a better future, how Mises's trips to Argentina and the implementations of these libertarian policies now may actually chart a new path for the nation, and J.D. Vance and his upcoming troubles possibly going for VP. And of course, we're going to end today with our Daily Delight, a story meant to leave you feeling positive and ready to take on the day. Now, that's enough rambling from me. Let's jump in to our daily debate. So, for those of you who have read John Rawls or even took a modern philosophy class or honestly just a philosophy class, you probably run into this equal theory, the idea that we want to go into making a society, everyone behind a curtain, everybody with blinders on, and therefore not knowing what characteristics you're going to have, where you're going to be placed on the economic ladder, so on and so forth. You would make the system as fair as possible so that every single person in any different situation would have relatively equal chances of moving up in that society, of prospering, surviving, thriving, so on and so forth. Because at the end of the day, you wouldn't know where you're going to end up. So you would want it to be the best situation possible for you. And it's a very interesting idea about self-interest. And we'll jump more into the theory of it. And also the article kind of goes through how this could be applied in modern day. But my question to you is it too close to utopian? And what I mean is it's not really utopian because it does acknowledge that there are still going to be differences between people and there's going to be different aspirations between some people. Some people might not want to even truly captivate all of the potential within the society, and some people are just going to sit back and do nothing. And, utopian would probably, in a perfect utopian world where everybody's outcome is the same because everybody prospers when one person prospers. They're really, in most utopias, then again, not all, but most utopias that are talked about, it's very collectivist in mentality. This seems like a very individualistic reaching towards utopia. And do you feel as though it's too close to utopian thinking? Maybe you don't think it's utopian thinking at all. Maybe you think it's just really practical thinking. And I think there's a little bit of both in there, but I want to hear everybody else's opinion about it, because that is one of the big accusations that does come its way, which is this is getting too close to utopia, because we couldn't even, unless we completely designated everybody's places and we really started to mess with the mechanisms and we had a board, overseeing the entire process of creating this new government, then it's not possible. So that's why some people accuse him of being very utopian in his thinking. And I think it's an interesting, how should I say it? I think it's an interesting accusation, or at least criticism to level at the theory, because I understand where it's based in, but also I do think he's a pretty practical guy, honestly. So let's jump into the first article that comes from The Nation, and the headline reads, "To imagine a better future, look to John Rawls." So I'm going to read the first paragraph so you kind of get where the author's coming from here and how he's summarizing Rawls' theory. Quote, "What would a fair society look like? Most of us, and by us I mean citizens of the world's richest democracy, would agree that societies we live in are far from fair. And yet, while our societies face many common challenges, cultural polarization, loss of trust in politics, inequality, ecological crisis, on nearly every dimension, these problems are at their most extreme in America. Indeed, the recent history of the United States is a cautionary tale of dangers of unbridled capitalism and its capacity to corrupt democracy, stunt opportunity, and sow social discord." And, okay, so I want to take a step back here, because if they're trying to say that this is the worst time in America, because they say the recent history of America, trust me, we have been at way worse times. I mean, before the Civil War, even the progressive era of the 20s, 30s, 40s, the major anti-war movement during the 70s. So, okay, I'm going to be honest. Late 60s, early 70s. I'm going to be honest. No, we're really not as far down. It may appear that way because everybody has their bubble, but not out there in the real world. We're really not. And then also the fact that it's the most extreme here in America, Excuse me? Okay, I feel like this is a little bit of Western bubbling. And let's be clear, everybody makes accusations, hey, you're just in a Western bubble when it suits their cause. So maybe I'm doing the exact same thing. Didn't Sudan just have a civil war within the last 10 years? Sorry, actually 15 years, and it's been going on for longer than that. And there was obvious cultural polarization within the country, and they split. What about what's going on in Yemen? What about what's going on in Indonesia, or what happened in Ukraine? Maybe there was a not necessarily a civil war, but kind of a cloaked civil war there in the early 2010s. Then we have lots of political strife going all across South America. So no, I'm going to be honest. No, we're pretty darn privileged. We live in a pretty great country. And the issues that we're fighting over nowadays, I'm not saying they're not important, but they really are first world issues. When we're looking at the amount of wealth that gets divvied up between the top end and the low end, and I'm not, let's be clear, wealth distribution, if you have an opinion on it, you can criticize me on it, but the fact is that even our most poor individuals still do better than a lot of the poorest people around the world. Does that mean that our system is necessarily more fair than that system? No, it just means that our system might be, quote unquote, still a little unfair, but it's just higher on the socioeconomic ladder. So even the people that are worst off here are doing better than some of the middle range people in other places. Sure, I can take that criticism. I can understand that point of view, but it's not as bad as the author's trying to make it out to be in the very first seconds. And you may think, hey, why are you dissecting that from the very beginning? Because it's not necessarily that it really matters that much. Because the point of the author here is not, okay, yes, it's so awful and terrible that this is absolutely necessary. They're not saying that. They're not using it as a call to revolution, so to speak. But they are planting those seeds of doubt to offer a solution. They're offering a proposition. This is how we fix all the terrible, terrible things. And I just want to make sure we put it into perspective, because yes, if the unfairnesses that are existing within our society, which I think are a little bit more far and few between than this author would like to acknowledge, but they're still there. There's no doubt about that. And whether that's on a cultural level or a government level is a different conversation that definitely needs to be had. But my point that I'm really getting at here is that when you plant these seeds and you imply, yes, this is the worst it's been. It's probably the worst here in America. And then you get people to start thinking about that, and then you come in with a magical solution, and you're really trying to push this when it may not be as necessary as you're implying. And that's why I really wanted to call it out from the very beginning. Let's be clear. The nation does lean one way more than the other, and maybe I do criticize the nation a little bit more when I'm reading some of their stuff. But that doesn't mean they don't have a good point, and that doesn't mean that John Rawls doesn't have at least something to his idea when he's proposing it, and the author doesn't have some sort of seeds of an important conversation that needs to be a part of the rest of the conversation. But I don't think it should be playing the lead violin, so to speak. I think it should probably be like fourth chair. And maybe realistic foreign policy and international policy would probably be like first or second chair, because at the end of the day, that's what needs to lead the conversation right now. Cultural war issues need to probably come like fourth. Economic issues probably need to come second, third. And then, maybe a little bit further down, we can have a conversation about aspirational society. But that's one, really far off, and two, it's really hard to just restructure society. So to pretend like we could, it gives it too much weight. And to say that we actually need to, one, it's impractical, but two, maybe we need to actually examine the reasonings they're giving for why we need to before we wholeheartedly do it because of how impractical it is. So you can see why I'm structuring things the way I am. So let's go into another part of the article that highlights a few things that I think are interesting for sure. Quote, and yet while politicians like Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, the architects of neoliberalism, could look to thinkers like Milton Friedman and Friedrich Hayek, to whom can progressives look for fresh inspiration today? There is a growing interest in Karl Marx and the democratic socialist tradition, which undoubtedly has much to offer, but Marx famously was reluctant to spell out a vision of what a just society might look like, and contemporary socialist thinking is often stronger on what's wrong with capitalism than what would replace it. And I think this is a good point that the author brings up here, which is these systems don't actually provide an end goal. And that's, even though I may not agree with the end goal and how we're going to achieve said end goal, they don't actually, these underpinnings of a lot of philosophical but also political thinking throughout the course of the 1900s, they end up eating one another because they don't offer a, so they offer a fundamental vision. And the fundamental vision is really, at its heart, a criticism and a way of deconstructing the current system and offering a way to empower the people that are restricted by that system. But then it also creates a reciprocating effect where eventually the people that are also, and this, let's be clear, Marx would and Engels would like to say that this is only a revolution kind of thing. The middle class revolts against the bourgeoisie, the middle class that's aligned with the proletariat, not the middle class that's aligned with the bourgeoisie, because there's, like the petty bourgeoisie. He uses a good amount of different terms, but the first revolution needs to be against the current rulers, and then the proletariat, after that revolution takes place, can then come in and do another revolution. So it's a two-revolution kind of system that he outlines. But what it actually happens in practice is the proletariat is constantly pushing against the people that are put into power after the revolution, because at the end of the day, you're supposed to be hypercritical and skeptical of the people in power. And also we see that just human corruption allows the system to funnel more money to the top, which gives the proletariat an even more legitimate criticism, which is, hey, the people at the top are hoarding the resources, the money, and the power, so on and so forth. So it doesn't provide a outline for restarting the society from the very top. It just gives a few different paths to revolutionizing the society and maybe a few principles that you need to really focus on, like, the labor value idea or the labor value theory. So what is the author getting at here? They're saying, okay, well, we know that the Marx ideas and even modern socialists are starting to say, it was really just a criticism of late stage or even early stage capitalism, but nowadays it's a criticism of late stage capitalism. What do we build after that? And this is where they go on to say something that's a little bit out of bounds, if you're going to ask me, but hey, let's just read what they have to say. Quote, Rawls' magnum opus, The Theory of Justice, published in 1971, revolutionized political philosophy and earned him a place in the canon of great Western thinkers. According to the prominent socialist philosopher G.A. Conan, there are at most two books in the history of the Western political philosophy that have a claim that are regarded greater than a theory of justice. So that's Rawls' book. One is Plato's Republic, and the other one is Hobbes' Leviathan. And so let's break that down. One, I think that there's no way that you can say that Plato's Republic is not one of the top books. And the reason that Plato's Republic, in my opinion, is one of the top books is because it actually outlines both socialistic theories and also realistic political theories, which could be adopted by one side or another, or communitarian ideas, which could be adopted by socialists and the collectivists, while also could be adopted by religious groups that have communities that they want to structure. So I think that's why it's something that undergirds Western philosophy so well, because it actually can be used by both sides, and that's why it's lasted so long. Hobbes' Leviathan. I'm not saying it's not a critical book. I'll say that it did not speak to me. That does not mean it's wrong. It's just John Locke's take versus Hobbes's take resonates more with me. So when I hear Hobbes's Leviathan and I hear that it's a socialist philosopher that said that, yeah, that makes sense to me. Oh, the raw power. That is something that undergirds a lot of socialist thinking and even some more libertarian thinking nowadays, which is a really ever since Nietzsche, it's been a very, very interesting focus on power, and a lot of theorizing has circled around that rather than the epistemological theory of finding truth, and it's become all about finding where the power is and using it to your advantage, and that's been a sole focus. It's kind of redefined how we think, and it's very, very interesting, and I find myself slipping into it all the time for sure, and I think that it's one of those things that it is really important, but I don't know if it started with Hobbes's Leviathan, I'll be honest. But the author has their opinions, and when the author is quoting somebody else who has their opinions, and then it throws the theory of justice in there as number 3, and I'm thinking to myself, really? So yeah, hold on. Second treatise of government, not in there. We're not going to talk about the wealth of nations, and I guess political philosophy, you could argue that the second treatise of government would definitely be political philosophy, but you could maybe argue wealth of nations wouldn't necessarily settle in there. But I feel as though there's more to be explored there than just those 3. So I really want to level the playing field here and say, I don't know. Don't get me wrong. The theory of justice, the theory that we want to have a fair society and that if everybody was blinded, it would be the best outcome. Yes, it is great political philosophy in the truest sense of we are going to just think. But when it comes to practical terms, it's definitely not up there. Then again, you could say the same thing about the Republic. In Leviathan, you could probably say the same thing, even though it does provide like an outline for practical, but not really. So my point being that yes, in philosophy, it poses great ideas, but even then they seem to fall apart because 1, it's not practicable, but 2, because there are innate abilities that people are born with. So even if you want to structure a society, and this is the main criticism, which I'm sorry I've left until now, but I really wanted to break down where the author's coming from, and if you stuck along this far, you actually kind of care what I would actually think about it rather than just criticizing. The idea that we create a society that provides a leg up or a way forward for practically everybody is 100% great. But when you actually go down to the micro and you say, hey, I don't know if I'm going to be X race, X gender, X disability, X disease, all these different factors, you can't actually account for all of those without having an overly contrived system or one that is so simplistic that it basically boils down to what we have now. And what I mean by that is codified in law that every man is made by their creator, and then also, in civil rights law, where basically you can't discriminate based on X, Y, and Z. You would end up with basic versions of that, which is all human beings are of value and need to be treated as such. And then as you start to make laws that go one way or another, guess what? You're going to accidentally disenfranchise one group over another, and then you're going to have to deal with those effects. So it is a natural progression of political systems that eventually you have to keep correcting for things, because the more you get involved, the more issues you see with your involvement. It's just like you trying to fix something when you're painting and you mess up the hue a little bit. Sometimes, if you're really simple with it, you go in with one hue, you can get it done. You can clean it up really nice. Or you start putting in a little bit too much here and there, and then the color completely changes. So you either have to be really simplistic and keep it that way, or you're going to become overly muddled, and then the whole purpose of the idea of just having a system that benefits everybody, it becomes too contrived. So that's why I think there's a main flaw there. That's not to say that there isn't something beautiful about the idea, and I love the idea. It just doesn't get nuanced enough, because guess what? Even if we account for all these superficial characteristics, what about the person who just has a raw ability to jump 6 feet versus the person that has a raw ability to jump 5 feet? How do you account for these sort of things and natural abilities that just exist within the genes of human beings? It's beautiful and it sounds really, really nice, but unless you're willing to strip everything and just, like I said, make a blanket statement, everybody is equal, we'll protect certain rights under the law, and you outline maybe one document and you don't add anything else to that, and you keep that as much of a level playing field as possible, and then you put in some sort of cultural restrictions, or you say, hey, these are our cultural mandates, we're going to try to stick to them, and you create some sort of way to actually make people adhere to that. That's the simple version compared to the overly contrived, well, hey, if you're 5 foot, then you get this, but if you're 6 foot, you get this. We got to make sure the outcome is equal. We're talking about equity. It becomes extremely, extremely contrived. And it's not even about the practical. It's just about actually thinking through the philosophy beyond the surface level. So that's enough on that one. Okay. I'm sorry. I ranted a long time. Rawls, I need to actually go through and read the entire theory of justice versus the excerpts that I got in college and the different quotations that I got from different philosophy books that look at philosophers of particular eras and the movements, or at least the conversations that they started. But it's definitely an interesting article. I would go check it out for sure. So our next one comes from the Mises Institute, and the headline reads, Mises in Argentina, Lessons of the Past for Today. So for those of you who don't know who Ludwig von Mises is, he is one of the fathers of the modern libertarian movement, along with Murray Rothbard, and he visited Argentina in 1959. And what did he learn? So I'm going to give a little excerpt. It's a bit of a longer paragraph, so stick with me. I'm only going to read this one, but it's an interesting conversation, and it has modern parallels. Quote, in his time, Perón turned the Argentinian economy into a command economy with massive price regulations, decapitalization that greatly damaged wages, infrastructure, nationalization, inflation, foreign exchange control, import and export restrictions, taxes, and quantitative limitations, among a myriad of interventions. So you can see he's talking about Perón here, who was the leader of Argentina, and he was making basically a very state-controlled or state interventionist economy. Quote, the military coup that ousted him from office had mixed views on how to conduct economic policy. There was somewhat of a consensus that policy should aim at recapitalization and lower restrictions, but the system of multiple exchange rates was removed. The bank deposits that had been previously nationalized were moved to a central bank or were given back to the private banks. Yet the military government intervened in finance and banking in other ways, like determining interest rates and carrying out operations in the open market by buying or selling currency and absorbed documents. So basically, they rolled back some of the government intervention, but they didn't really roll back a whole bunch. And it kind of set Argentina, along with the more like pink socialist movement that moved through South America. Well, the pink movement's actually moving through now, sorry. It's a mischaracterization. There was a more socialistic or at least state-controlled movement moving through in the early or mid-1900s, and the pink movement's kind of a resurgence of it nowadays. But the point being, Argentina was on a really rough financial path for a long, long time. And now you have Mr. Milei coming back in, and let's be clear, I'm not just praising Milei to praise Milei, because he's funny. I wasn't super aware. I had heard a little rumblings here and there, because Argentina is one place that I at least have a news tab on, because I had a teacher who was from Argentina. I went to Argentina. It's a beautiful nation. It has a special place in my heart. I think it was the first time I actually went outside the nation that I can remember, besides like Canada. And Canada, no offense, Canada, you're not that special. So Argentina holds a very special place in my heart, and I had actually talked to a foreign exchange student who was from Argentina, two of them, and they were really excited about Milei taking over. So he is this von Mises character coming in, or at least from the outside. Von Mises criticized some of these policies and was really trying to crack down on the problems that were going on in Argentina. And now you have Milei, who is a ardent follower, or at least evangelist for the von Mises way of getting states out of the business of the people. And he is leading in this new revolution. And the whole point of this article is that the groundwork was laid a long time ago for something like this to happen. And it never actually took hold, because there was this statist, this interventionist government that was trying to control everything so tightly, and it ended up not working. And now, instead of it being, hey, we needed to roll back some of these controls right when we got the military coup in there, no, we stayed on this path, and now they have to have a radical reformer who is going to make it even more painful for the people of Argentina. He made them fully aware of that. He said it's going to be rough, but when you don't follow through 100% on these sort of things, and let's be clear, is Von Mises 100% right on every single thing? I think I could have lots of conversations about it. But if your goal is to get the government out of the economy as much as possible and stabilize things into a more free market system, and you only go halfway, guess what? One, it just looks terrible because you can't even make up your mind. But two, it's not going to fall into one of the strict ideologies or strict camps that at least has some sort of rationale behind it, which is, like a more Keynesian. Let's be clear, whether you like Keynesian or not, whether you think he's 100% right, at least in the short term and even in some long-term breakdowns, you could at least understand how the theory is meant to work and try to work towards that. But when you have a mixed system, both of the offsets that either one offer are not actually there to protect you from the worst of the other. And guess what? Then you have a situation like Argentina. So then you have to have a radical man coming in with the chainsaw, trying to cut down all the regulations and cut down all the BS that's been happening for all these years. So I think it's an interesting article. You should definitely go read it. It gives more in-depth history that I just didn't have time to necessarily cover. But the Mises Institute, some of their stuff is a little heavy. So just be forewarned. And if you're not a libertarian, you may not like the perspective they take on a lot of things. But it's definitely an interesting article. So our last one comes from Poltizoom, and it is an article with the headline, J.D. Vance is dangerous. Gary Kasparov has his number. And guess what? At the end of the day, a lot of people, whether you like it or not, a lot of people are saying J.D. Vance is on the short list for VP. I'm sorry, I don't think that Trump needs him to win Ohio. No offense to Vance. I think that Vance he speaks MAGA, but he doesn't speak to a contingent that Trump may want to win over. He's not necessarily unlikable. I just wouldn't say he's the most likable gentleman. If you really want to go the intersectional route, he is, and I hate the intersectional route, but there could be an argument made for he doesn't appeal to any demographics that Donald Trump doesn't already have. Yeah, it's really, in my opinion, that argument's BS, but you still hear it thrown around a whole bunch. So let's take a step back. Why is Vance getting into trouble nowadays? Quote, this is just starting to get rolling, and my prediction is that Kasparov is going to continue to tell Vance where to stick it in no uncertain terms. Coupled with the prediction is the observation that Vance is one of about a dozen governors, would-be governors, Congress members, and senators who are all eagerly debasing themselves on a regular basis as they vie for the coveted position in MAGA world of Donald Trump's vice president. Look for Vance to further identify with Putin in order to win over Trump. And this is because, quote, the most recent flare of note in the culture war is J.D. Vance, otherwise known as Putin's other puppet, attacking chess champion Gary Kasparov. Kasparov has lived under communism, and he knows who and what Vladimir Putin is. And this is the criticism for J.D. Vance not supporting the Ukraine aid and bill. So let's take one step back. We're going to do it again. I think I've said this in every single article. Let's take a step back. Why is not supporting Ukraine aid initially make you a Putin puppet? Why? Well, give me a legitimate reason. Now, could you say that your foreign policy is actually benefiting Russia? Sure. How does that make you a Putin puppet? Because maybe you have your own internal logic that says, I don't want to give the money here, and I don't care if it benefits Russia. And then other people are going to say, well, I think that's stupid. We shouldn't benefit Russia, this, that, and the other. But that doesn't make him a Putin puppet. And I hate this sort of... I hate this childish name calling to make things stick. Oh, he's a Putin puppet. It has a nice alliteration. Great. Good for you. You said something that is absolutely pointless. Now, if you come to me with documents that J.D. Vance is being bribed, that he's being given some sort of extra benefits, that he's being blackmailed by Putin, and then he's doing whatever Putin wants, sure, I will take the name Putin puppet, but just trying to call him a Putin puppet for standing for something that he believes in, even if you don't agree with the rationale, is BS, and get over it. Now, does that mean that Kasparov's not going to have his number and be able to point some things out to him? No, I don't disagree with that. Is he definitely trying to fit into a circular hole as a semicircular peg? Maybe, and maybe he's doing that for the sake of the vice presidency, or maybe he's doing that because that's where his base is, or maybe that's where he actually is. All those things can be on the table. That doesn't make him a Putin puppet. And I hate this sort of dumb name calling, because even if let's be clear, I have said multiple times that I would not be providing the same amount of money to Ukraine, if any money to Ukraine. Maybe that's why I'm a little bit empathetic towards this one, but that doesn't mean you can't talk to me about strategic interests. That doesn't mean that you can't say, hey, we need to continue funding until we get Putin to the table. Maybe, we don't actually telegraph that, because that would actually be Putin like, oh, okay, well, they said that they're just going to keep funding until we come to the table, so we're just going to, keep going and going and going and going. That could lead to two things. Either Putin could say, hey, we're going to bleed them dry and put them in a financially hard spot, or vice versa. Oh, they're really going to stick with it until they get us to the negotiating table. Maybe we should get to the negotiating table before we hit another stalemate, or we may possibly lose some of the benefits we have when they decide even more money is necessary. My point being that I do agree that we need to seriously start pulling back, if not completely canceling the money that we're giving out to Ukraine. So maybe that makes me a little empathetic. Maybe someone would call me a Putin puppet, and that's why I would be frustrated with it. But also, I can tell you now, I hold my belief without caring whatsoever what Putin says to me, or he doesn't have any blackmail over me. He's not bribing me to say what I want to say. So I know that I'm not a direct Putin puppet. He doesn't have my strings, so to speak. So maybe that's what really frustrates me, because no, this position can actually be held in a very genuine manner. And even Ukraine, from the very beginning, I was like, I didn't even really, you can go back and ask some of the college people, which is, I was saying that Putin's not going to nuke anyway, but that doesn't mean that we have to, because the fear that some people were at the very beginning of the war, at least at my college, were, oh, hey, we can't get too directly involved with this, or at least we need to make sure that we're very calculated with doing this, because we don't want American troops on the ground, because Putin could unleash a nuclear strike. And I was just sitting there like, Putin's not going to do that. Okay, I'm sorry. I don't care what you think. I do not think he is that much of an irrational actor on the world stage that he is going to unleash nukes on any part, no matter how strategically contained they were. So, yeah, no, I didn't think that was possible. So my thought was, yeah, we could at least go in there, provide a whole bunch of funding. It doesn't mean I think we should. And it's not just because, oh, hey, I'm afraid of Putin. It's just because I don't see the geostrategical interest. Then I saw that, Russia wasn't necessarily doing so well once the U.S. bumped up some of its funding. I was like, okay, geostrategically, I'm not necessarily, I'm not opposed to giving money there. I don't necessarily think it's the best thing, but if it's going to weaken Putin. But now it seems like it's not weakening Russia. At this point, we need to seriously say, hey, we need to get out. Okay? Yeah, I think that's a relatively principled stand. It's mainly, geopolitics. It's not necessarily about, money going outside the United States, because money's going to go outside the United States, whether it's through the IMF, whether it's through some of our loan programs. We've been doing this for years upon years. It buys us strategic interests in certain countries. It allows our companies to go over there and be able to make money, have certain trade agreements, not have to deal with high tariffs. There are lots of benefits to money going outside the United States. That doesn't mean that it just needs to happen willy-nilly, especially when it comes to a war that can possibly antagonize somebody else, and we don't necessarily want to push Russia, China, and Iran closer together, even though they're already growing closer together. So all these sort of calculations need to be talked about, and not just, oh, Putin puppet, or, oh, these people just want to keep sending our money overseas. No, okay. I understand you all have to come down on your principled side because you need your quick talking point, and you can't spend 5 minutes explaining it like I just did. But come on, guys. Let's be realistic. And at the end of the day, this article, it's a little funny. Doesn't mean that I agree with all the ways that they go about it. But if you want to check out the whole article, it's longer than I gave it credit for. Go check out the link in the description below, that like and subscribe button. So with all that said, let's get past the negative. Let's jump to the positive. Our daily delight comes from Discover Wildlife. A zookeeper visits a former penal colony in Australia only to find it overrun with adorable wombats. And I'll be honest, these guys, they are quite adorable. So they're found on Maria Island, and it is, it's about 30 minutes away from Mercury Passage. I have no idea where that is, but it's around Tasmania. And if you go to this island, you will find so many of them. And there's actually their ancestors of one that used to be giant. It's a really interesting read. They got really cute photos on here. So if you want to check out this one or any of today's articles, they'll all be below the like and subscribe button in that description. Plus, down there, you can find the link to the podcast on Spotify, Pocket Cast, Google Podcasts, as well as Podvine, and the Twitter handle at Your Daily Flip, where I post a Twitter tirade every Tuesday and Thursday. So, with all that said, there's only one more thing to say. Stay safe, don't die.